Okay. All right. Thank you for coming. This is very exciting. Okay, so I get the immense pleasure of introducing Margaret, but before I do, I also want to introduce the Voice of Experience program. So this is a new HR leadership program. We really believe that. You down? Yeah. It's on that. So we really believe that experiential learning is probably one of the best ways to learn. So we like to kind of bring some speakers in, bring leaders from the community in, and help with that. And Margaret just happens to be one that works in our department, so that's exciting. Margaret has been here for a little over 5 years. She was an Air Force civilian before she came to CDPG, and then she has a ton of experience in the military that she will speak to. A couple of points I do want to point out: she was born in Germany. Well, that's exciting. To military parents, so it's a family thing, and then she'll speak through that as well. Raised in Southern California to some structured maternal grandparents, and she'll speak to that and how it kind of shaped some of her decisions. She has been married to veterans. She has a child that's in the military, parents in the military, so definitely, again, a family thing. I do want to kind of highlight some of the medals that she's earned because there's a list of them, and I feel like that's really exciting. So Army Commendation Medals, got 2 Army Achievement Medals, 3rd Valorous Unit Award, Army Good Conduct Medals, National Defense Service Medal, Southwest Asia Service Medal with a Bronze Service Star attached to that, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, so thank you for that, Army Service Ribbon, and a Cold War Service Recognition. So that's kind of exciting. A lot of really cool medals. Thank you for service. And then outside of that, I'm going to let her introduce herself. She's got a lot of personal stories that come into this as well as the military experience. So Margaret, thank you very much, and thanks to you.
So this is on, yes?
You might have to push the power button.
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I heard myself. So my name is Margaret. I'm records manager in the Air Division, and I've been here for about 5 years. Josephine helps me here, so I'm partially deaf. I lost my hearing while I was in the Army. So that's kind of a real brief introduction. Get my notes. So as Audrey said, I was born in Germany and raised in Southern California in a very regimented household by my maternal grandparents. My mom was in the Army. She was an MP. She was at Fort Ord, California, which I believe now is closed. The Presidio is still there, though, language school for intelligence. My dad was in the Army. He was infantry. He went to Vietnam twice. He was stationed in Frankfurt, which is where I was born. Awesome place to be born. I was there for a whole 6 weeks. I was born 2 weeks early because I got in an accident on the Autobahn, and I was almost born in a helicopter. Not quite. I made it to the hospital. Let's see. My kid joined the military when he was 17. You need parental permission to do that. And he went off to war in Kuwait, and stayed there for a few months. He is now out. He developed seizures while he was in the military and was medically retired. He currently works for the state as well, so he's a great big grown man, like 6 of them. I was in the service in uniform for about 7 years. On paper, about 20 years. So when you sign a contract with the military, you obligate yourself to a certain time frame of duty. Not all of that is necessarily spent in uniform, but it is spent where you are eligible to be called back and sent to wherever the military thinks they need you. That may not be where you think you're needed. So, okay. So here's some nifty pictures of some stuff that we did. The one over there, I'm with the John Marie in France. We provided the security for heads of state during the 60th anniversary of Normandy. It's an awesome experience. The one below, we used to go to the field a whole lot. That's camouflage netting. It's supposed to protect us from being observed by the enemy. Has IR, infrared, bed, all that sort of stuff, protective. And the other one, I was in Saudi on guard duty, kind of tired. It was one of those that were like, that's a really old school picture. There we go. So as I said, my dad was in the military, Vietnam. My mom, Fort Ord. I've been married to 2 veterans. My kid's dad was infantry. We have a thing for infantry. They're the grunts. They're the ones you always see on TV doing all that high-speed empty stuff. So his dad was, that's my kid, by the way. His dad was in the infantry, and then my former spouse was also in the infantry for 20 years. He retired. My son was stationed in Oklahoma, and then also in Texas. So me, the first time I joined the military was in 1989. I was young. I thought I was high speed. I thought I could do all that nifty stuff. I really did. It was a different military in 1989. It was not what you see today. I joined the military because I was a single parent. I needed health insurance for my kid. I needed a steady job. I needed a paycheck. And I knew what the military could offer me, being married to a former infantryman. When you join the military at that time, it was segregated for basic training. So I trained with a bunch of other women. Most of us were young. I think I was 23 then. And we go in, we have to do PT every morning, wake up at 04:30. You get yelled at. Those were the years where they just stopped, where they could push you around a whole lot. It did happen on occasion, but it was much more frowned upon. But you did get cussed at and called names and all sorts of stuff like that. I trained to be a Patriot missile system mechanic. So for those of you who can remember the first Gulf War, I was a scud buster. That was our really nifty title. I got to shoot down scuds. I forgot to bring in my piece of scud. But I do have a piece from when they were falling down around us. It was pretty, it was a moment, that was. So after I trained, training took about a year, single parent, went off to my unit, and most of the females were put on the desk. We were not afforded the opportunity to actually do our job. For whatever reason, my warrant officer came up to me a couple days after I'd been in my unit and said, what are you doing in formation with that group? And I'm like, well, this is where I was told to be. He says, no, get over here. You're in the motor pool, you're a mechanic, and you will work. I was like, oh, cool. So they put me to work as a mechanic, which is what I was trained to do. Now, as a mechanic, you have a toolbox that you sign for, which is about this high, about yay, and it's on wheels. And our equipment was in the motor pool. It's Patriot missile system, so there's a lot of circuitry, but there's also a lot of auto mechanics as well involved in well. So our toolkit had tools for both things. My first day out on the job with that crew, they were like, well, bring your toolkit. I'm like, dude, this is kind of heavy. They're like, it's your toolkit, you bring it. Now, mind you, I was the first female to actually work in my position in the world. Being a ground faker is not always fun. No. So I dragged that toolkit out to the motor pool. I ruined the toolkit, taking it out to the motor pool, because I drug it across all the gravel and everything else. And when the guys finally saw that I was willing to do this, they were like, let me get you a hand. And we nearly had a fist fight, because I told them back off my toolkit. It's mine. They will not touch it from now on. Being a single parent in the military in those years was a little bit different than it is today. Today, they acknowledge that kids need parents and support and all that sort of stuff, according to military standards, that is. And that is very different than civilian standards. But back then, it was even different. So we had moral regulations. As a female single parent, I was not allowed to engage in any adult activities with anybody that I may go on a date with. That was immoral behavior. And I could be kicked out of the army. My hair was tightly regulated. I could only have 3 braids. Bobby pins had to match. Pink hair was definitely not allowed. Cornrows were not allowed. That was an ethnic hairstyle. Let's see, what else? Oh, if I was caught out drinking too much, I could be written up and kicked out of the Army for that. So there were moral regulations that regulated my behavior that did not regulate male behavior. So those I believe have changed now, and good riddance still.
Oh, that's,
Whoops. Yeah.
oh, please.
So if you guys remember, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait in 1990, and my unit was rapid response. So we were sent over the first phase 3 days after that invasion. I went over 2 weeks later. I was supposed to pick my kid up from his dad. He was visiting. I got to call my kid and said, dude, I can't do it. So you can stay with your dad for a while. That was a hard phone call. Probably one of the hardest I've ever made, leaving my kid with his dad. So we head on over to Saudi. Now, how many of you guys have been to the Middle East as a tourist, business, anything? It is a different area. One, it's very, very hot. I got off the plane, it was 128 with heat index. I was in full battle rattle. And the Air Force was not necessarily conducive to the Army being on their air base for any amount of time. So you had 3 canteens of water that you're required to carry with you. I went through 3 canteens of water really, really fast, and we could not get any more water. It sucked. I did get dysentery while I was there. I was in the hospital for days for that one. Dysentery is horrible. If you have not experienced that, don't test that theory. My job was shooting down scuds. That's what we did. We called them tactical ballistical missiles. So the Patriot system was designed to shoot down incoming aircraft, not necessarily scuds. There were a lot of software issues that we had. We were also just not designed to shoot down everything targets, which is aircraft. I just said that. We had to work closely with Raytheon because we had a lot of glitches. So there's a thing that we call the Battle of Riyadh. Riyadh's a city in Saudi, and that's where all of our systems, about 8 different batteries, each battery has 7 launchers. Each launcher has 4 missiles on it. 7 different batteries were firing at what turned out to be clouds. We shot down a lot of clouds that day because of glitches in the system. Raytheon worked really, really hard to fix those glitches. We were in the news a lot, and it wasn't always positive, those glitches. It happens. One glitch we had, sadly, caused loss of life. So for those of you who remember the Gulf War, you remember when a scud came down and took out a group of guardsmen. Well, what happened is the battery that was covering that asset went down for maintenance. We were one of the backups along with somebody else. We got the glitches, we didn't see the incoming missiles, and people died. That is a sucky part of war. And that is not fun. So we came back from the Middle East, and all of a sudden we're heroes. Now, a lot of you look at the military today, and you're like, oh, thank you for your service. And that's really cool, and I do appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of other veterans do as well. In the 80s, that is not the way it was. In the 80s, you did not leave base in uniform. People did not thank you for your service. You could be beat up a lot, often, and horribly. You were called names. You were charged more. You were treated horribly. People did not like the military. That's a carryover from the Vietnam era. All of a sudden with the Gulf War, we're heroes. That was a really big change for me to experience. I got off the plane, my family, well, my kid could be there, and all these people were waiting for us. It was just really surreal. I was passed from person to person. Civilians were kissing me and hugging me, and I'm like, oh my God, it was a bit much. Couldn't wait till I could get out of that crowd and just stand back. And by that time, they ran out of beer and sandwiches, so I didn't even get food and break. But you know what? I was home. I turned in my weapon, I turned in my gas mask, and I went to the billets. I got out of the military for this stint because we were going to go to Korea, because North Korea was getting pretty hot and active, and they needed a patriot over there. And I said, I'm not leaving my kid again. That's hard. It's really, really hard. So I got out, became a civilian. Woo-hoo. I went back in the military when my kid was pretty well grown. In 2003, I joined the reserves. And at that time, I changed my job and became a counterintelligence agent, which is really, really different than working on Patriot missiles. Well, not the missiles, but the system. I was in the reserve for a year, and then I went back to active duty and went to Germany. So the picture up there, you'll see, that was the second time I got frostbite on my toes. We were in the field. It was cold. It's a place called Grafenwehr. It gets really cold there. Down below, you'll see my promotion. The other picture there with I'm holding a 60. I'm not strafing my boss, by the way. He is behind me. So he's not in the target zone. That was in Saudi during the Gulf War, and we were building a bunker house. And then the last picture up there is we were leaving Germany. So Josephine became part of my family in Germany, and I brought it back with me. I went back in because I missed the Army. There's a lot that you can get from the Army that you don't get being a civilian. There's camaraderie. I get paid to exercise. That was kind of cool. The test for exercising wasn't too cool, but exercising was cool. Good paycheck, retirement, and just knowing that I finished doing it. That was a huge thing for me. So I went back in. As a counterintelligence agent, that sounds really high speed and all that, but it's not. I did a lot of briefings. So we had a briefing called SAEDA, Subversion and Espionage Against the Army. And I would talk to about anywhere from 20 people to 400 people and tell them how not to be a spy or a terrorist or to subvert the military. Those were really kind of fun. I did the 60th anniversary to Normandy, provided security for heads of state. That was a lot of fun. I worked with IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, Romanian intelligence, German intelligence, and occasionally the three-letter intelligence agencies. That's CIA, FBI. Being in Germany, I traveled as much as the military would allow me time for. Went everywhere I could. It's an awesome place. Europe is wonderful. If you have not had a chance to visit, go visit. Don't tell them you're American. I got out though. I did not finish. And the reason I got out, well, I had some health issues pop up. And you know, the military health is not necessarily the best thing in the world. And for a female, you would think a thyroid test would be pretty standard, right? It's not. Not then. That's all my health issues were. Thyroid. Really simple to fix. Instead, it blew up to this huge thing, and I had all these fancy tests, and they were telling me all these horrible things about myself. So I got out. If we would have tested my thyroid, it would have been that. I could have finished. So my education, I bring up my education because the military paid for a lot of my education. That's one of the things you get as a GI Bill. I have 3 years in elementary education I took in between while I was a civilian. So I almost became an elementary school teacher. And if you know me well enough, you will know it's probably a good thing that did not happen. I have formal education 1 year Arabic. I was almost conversational. I was definitely conversational in German. And the more I went to fest with the landlord, the more I thought I could speak. I have an additional 2 years of modern Middle Eastern history with a focus in counterterrorism. It took me 2 more years to finish my bachelor's. Then I went on to my master's. And yeah, the certified archivist led me to the position here. So here we go talking about some things specific to the military. So you'll see me with a beard. That's in the Hofbrauhaus. That's where Hitler and Himmler had their fight, were thrown in jail. He wrote Mein Kampf. That pub is still there. It's kind of neat to have walked in history. The bottom picture there is me. The first time I got out of the military, I was visiting my grandma. The other picture is some folks I worked with. And there's my kid. Oh, and speaking, if you guys turn around, the guy back there in the corner, that's my kid. So, some of the things the military challenges you with. I'm female, and that can be a lot of things to a lot of different people. But the military expects female to be this weird combination of feminine and soldier. And you can't be too feminine, because if you're too girly, you can't hang. But if you're too soldier, you get accused. And the first time I was in the military was before Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It was when you do get kicked out for being homosexual. So if they thought that you were too masculine as a female soldier, they investigate you. So you can't be too masculine either. So it's this weird thing going on that you have to do. And then you throw in the moral regulations and things like that, being a single parent. And I was young, and I mean, you know, you do stuff when you're young. And it was interesting. Going back in the military, there was an 11-year break in service for me. The Army has changed in that time, and I'm sure it's changed since then. We were a little more touchy-feely in the Army at that time, which is good and bad. I don't know. I mean, what do you do when you go to the field and you're training? You can't be touchy-feely. You need to do your job. You need to do your stuff. I do miss the camaraderie. I really, really do. Civilians aren't nearly, don't take this personal, but civilians aren't nearly as welcoming at the get-go. In the military, you always had a family. You show up at a base, you'd be a complete stranger, and you always had a family. You walked in, someone was inviting you over for a barbecue, for movies, have a beer, let's go out, whatever it was. You always had that. Civilians, no. You go to work, you might get close to the people you work with, you might not. You are not invited out. There are no barbecues. The boss man does not come around weekly to say hello. That's just the way it is. So joining the military did help me become strong. I joined when I was 23 the first time, and it is scary to leave your family and go off on this adventure that even though you were married to the military, you don't know what it's going to be like because it's you experiencing it. I have more confidence than I ever had before. I have more experiences than I ever had before. Take me out sometime, I'll tell you stories all night long. And I'll giggle a lot about it too. Some of the challenges, double standards. Again, being a female, I had to drink more, I had to cuss more, I had to do more than all the guys to be accepted as barely equal. And that's just reality. I also had to be a lady. But man, don't wear skirts very often because then you're too ladyish and they're not going to take you serious. Some of the things I do regret doing while in the military is I bought into a level of misogyny, which looking back, I'm kind of like, you know, that wasn't cool. I don't know if it's good or bad. It's the culture. It's the way it was. It's what I did to survive and get by. I did it well. I was one of the girls that got along with the guys. And I was right in there with the conversation. In fact, I usually shut the guys down because you had to be more. Military, from what I experienced, also lacked mentorship for women. There were not strong female leaders, or if there were, you could not be their friend. That would be favoritism. They had to be harder on you than they would be on anybody else. The military does not allow for the differences in physical. So women menstruate. That could be a problem, a serious problem when you're in the field. And at that time, it was expected that you would menstruate to maintain health. However, do not let that interfere with your job duties. And that's this weird contradiction. Don't get pregnant. Oh, don't do that. But if you do, you need to be a mother. Oh, and a soldier. Oh, and a female. Do you see some of the challenges that women have? There was a lack of appropriate birth control, so don't have sex, even though you may be an adult and entitled to do whatever it is that you are doing. So as a civilian, yet now, it's a different world. I can go to doctors that understand far more my physical needs. I don't have to worry as much being judged about having a kid, if I got pregnant, any of that stuff, right? However, you also lose a lot. So as a female veteran, you get judged. You get judged by the veterans who forget to buy you a beer. That's happened. You get judged by the veterans who went to combat, because as a female, certainly you didn't do all that. And that happens. So again, you don't get your beer. You get judged by civilians. Civilians think, ooh, it's a veteran. I got PTSD and they're going to go all wonky on me if I look at them wrong. Or you get judged by civilians of, oh my God, you're a hero. It's really weird being a veteran. It's really weird being a female veteran. And I'm kind of facetious and sarcastic a little bit on that. But some of it, it's like, wow, I'm not a hero. I did my job. I appreciate that you don't want to beat me up anymore. That's cool. But hero worship is a little bit much. I'm not a hero. I'm just somebody who signed a contract. And I did a good job being in the military. Forgot to turn my paper. So here's some numbers on female veterans. Female veterans have a very high suicide rate. And if you look at that green bar right there, you can see it. We're more successful than civilians when we do engage in suicide attempts. And that is because we generally use firearms. We are about 10% of the veteran community. That number is growing. More and more women are enlisting in the military. Top 4 disability. I am a disabled veteran. I'm 30% disabled. I'm disabled due to my back, my knee, my shoulder, and tendonitis. I am not disabled due to hearing loss. I am severe and moderate deaf. You have to be profound in both ears to get that disability. Let's see. 98% of veterans have been married versus 72% of civilians. So we like to get married a lot. 23% of veterans are more likely to be divorced versus 12% of civilians. So we also get divorced a lot. I don't need to read the numbers to you. You can see them well enough for yourself. But you can see that female veterans offer challenges that female civilians or male veterans do not bring to the table. And those are discussions that have only been recognized, I would say, within the last 5 or so years. Here's a bunch of resources. This will also be available via, so I believe this is being taped and will be put up on HR's website. Audrey will let you know the specifics of that because I don't want to misspeak and misdirect you. But this information will be available and these links will be live. So if you know somebody, male or female, who needs resources, direct them to this, but really reach out to that female veteran. It's kind of weird. Even though we don't want to be hero worship, that thank you is really, really kind of nifty. That recognition is really cool. So I brought in some show and tell for you guys, and I'll just go over it really briefly. These are random things that were mine. Well, they still are mine, like my rank. Unit patches. It's insignia that goes on here. Believe it or not, there's heraldic rules that go into designing these. Some of my ribbons. Hearing protection. Check that out, baby. That is always important for hearing loss. And in the military, we also have a tradition with coins. So you can receive coins for different recognition for doing things. And I've received all of these coins. Each one has its own story behind it. And if you ask me, I'll tell you what it is. I'm going to tell you all because there's a lot of coins. And I'm really proud of those. So part of the tradition with the coin is you had to carry a coin in your pocket. Because if you were out somewhere and someone did the coin check and you didn't have your coin, you bought the whole place around with alcohol. That gets expensive very quick. You always carried your coin. I have some nifty lapel pins from when I was in Normandy, working with Secret Service and Capitol Police. And then over here are some baseball cards. So one of the guys I worked with, his mom put together these baseball cards that were available during the Gulf War. I don't know how much this is worth, if anything, but it's really, really cool. So feel free to look at these. And then a few photos, because photos are nifty. So also questions. Does anybody have any questions? No questions? I told you everything you wanted to know? I mean, that's cool. I didn't know I was going to, I'm all that by your tips. I'll go back there and talk about this. So that was our flight going to Israel. We did a mission down there working with IDF. There's me with the Gendarmerie in France. So the Gendarmerie are the police force. There's my kid. See, if you look at him now, he's a little bit older. That's when he was 17. So that's him graduating basic training. And then the other one was the first or second day of arrival at basic training, second day. And he hadn't had much sleep. They don't give you much sleep after you arrive. They start yelling at you pretty quickly. So that's why there's a difference in the expression going on there. So that's me with a gentleman, I don't remember his name. He's with the French Mountain Legion. So the French Mountain Legion are the ones who helped start the 10th Mountain Legion here in the US. This is a disparate group of Europeans, you can be from any country, who enlist in this unit. And they do some really hardcore stuff. This gentleman happened to be from Naples. He was really, really nice. He gave me this really cool knapsack. I have it in my office if you want to see it. And he would run with me. My kid and I, again, at his basic training graduation. And then that bottom one was the first time I was in the Army during the 90s. And I think I was feeling a bit cocky in that picture. So again, the upper one there, I was on guard duty in Saudi. The bottom one, Germany. If you see the castle behind it, that is Neuschwanstein, the one Sleeping Beauty's castle. So when you got to see that, it's pretty cool. Up there is that bunker house we're building. I was testing the doorway is what I was doing. And then we started, messing around just a little bit, because we would do that. The upper one there, the Band of Brothers came to Germany and was doing a book signing tour. So I'm getting a book signed by the Band of Brothers. Pretty cool. My promotion, a fountain, one of the towns, Germany. Down there, I'm in Israel. That's the Dead Sea. You really do float, by the way. You don't sink. You float and you can bounce in the water. It is so cool. That's in France, in Strasbourg. And if you look, Josephine has a little head poking through the door there.
Oh.
So that's our encampment and our team in Israel. And then again, me in Grafenwehr. I did not like Grafenwehr. That picture up there is the range, and that is the day I lost my hearing. So I can speak to that real quick. Went out with fairly normal hearing. I hadn't fired AM16 in 11 years. Unbeknownst to me, and in case you're not aware, you should be, ear canals change size as you age. I believe they grow larger. Well, I wore earplugs from the size I had previously, which were not fitted to my ear. I get out on the range, I'm having issue 0, and then I'm having, well, once I zeroed, I was able to qualify with my weapon. And then I'm also firing the M240 Bravo, which is kind of a little bit bigger. And my ears were ringing, which happens when you're exposed to a lot of sound. I came off the range, and my first sergeant's behind me, he's talking, I didn't hear him. So he whacked me up on top of the head, and I turned around to yell at him. I'm like, what are you doing? That wasn't what I yelled, but that's good to hear. And I couldn't hear him, and he's yelling at me. I'm like, what? What? So I lost complete and total hearing in both ears when I haven't. I go sit calm, and I'm like, yeah, you lost your hearing, all right. Let's give it a bit. So about 2 weeks later, everything that what I have now is what came back. So technically, I am severe and moderate deaf. There are 4 levels of hearing loss. Profound is the really bad one that most people think of. So the other picture is Josephine running through the woods. Oh my God, that girl would run. She's about 2 feet off the ground there. If you see her today, she will not be doing that. She's now 14 years old and glaring at me. Our going away party. Again, Band of Brothers. Whoops. And then a unit picture out in Israel. I told you we provided security to Normandy in the 60th anniversary. That was the sunrise on that morning. And then the American Cemetery, they did sand sculptures. That was a moving event. One of the stories I have, I'm doing good on time, right? Yeah. Okay. So one of the stories I have so many stories. One of the stories I have is I was out in front of the American Cemetery. It was raining, and this car drove up. Now I don't speak French. I know like 3 or 4 French words that I learned while I was there. Yeah, that's it. So this car drove up, and this little old lady, like little itty bitty old lady, gets out, and she starts speaking rapid French to me. Well, I already don't speak French, and the faster you go, the worse it's going to get for me and her. And it's pouring down rain, and she's in a puddle, and I'm like, oh my God, get back in the car, lady, get back in the car. And she's getting pretty exuberant and feminine, so I'm like, dude, get the caretaker for the cemetery. So the other guy gets on the radio. We're trying to get the caretaker down there, and she's shoving these flowers at me, and I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do with these flowers. So finally he gets down, he takes the flowers, he's talking to them. Now, the French are overwhelmingly nice and hospitable. And when you get there and they find out that you're a service member and you're supporting this anniversary, they were all over us trying to give us stuff and be nice to us and everything. She wanted to make sure her flowers were delivered to thank the service members who died in the storm. So we got our flowers. Caretaker takes them. He's going to put them up on the main display. And then I'm trying to help her get back in the car. And the next thing you know, she's grabbing me. I'm half in the car, and her and the other little lady and the little old man who are in the back seat are all like hugging me and telling me thank you and giving me kisses. I'm like, whoa, I'm gonna be kidnapped by these three little French people who are Lebanese. It was really humbling to be there and experience that kind of emotion and outpouring from these people. Everywhere you drive in France, you will see little plaques on villages of the unit heraldry, these type of things, of the unit that liberated that village. It's really, really amazing. The French are wonderful. So there's me again. Based on the patch, I think I was at E4, which is called a specialist. Me at the Hofbrau house, my kid. Anybody got questions?
Was that in Normandy? Was that in 2009? Is that right?
2004. 2004 in Normandy. So they just had the 70th anniversary.
I have a question.
75th.
Can you tell us a little bit about transitioning from working in the military to working in the civilian world and maybe some of the challenges you faced?
Yeah. So I'm going to yell at you while I do this. That is actually one of the things. So part of that is being dad, but also part of it is in the military you yell a lot. Some of the problems I had as a boss was expecting people to automatically do what I told you to do. You can ask some clarifying questions, but I don't need very much on why. Just do it. So it was a challenge for me to come in and go, oh, I need to tell you why. So you can buy in and actually want to do what I'm asking you to do. That was another challenge, asking people. Not doing things like, hey, Candace, go get that from the printer. I was saying, hey, Candace, since you're over there, would you mind picking this up for me from the printer? It's a huge difference. Candace would probably not mind picking it up for me from the printer if I did it that way. But then I start saying, hey, Candace, do this. She's like, what? And so I just noticed my body language also changes. That is something that has been pointed out to me. Veterans will frequently stand more erect. We will often walk faster. Civilians kind of slouch, turn that shoulder in. We will also frequently stand more like this, or like this. And you will catch me doing this a lot. I will stand like this. Other transitions. Lack of regimented time. That was another one. My time was not nearly as regimented. So in the military, there are very clear expectations, and I knew exactly what needed to be done. Civilians, not so much. Here, not so much. I have to build my own expectations a lot of times. My boss expects excellent work. Sometimes I have to figure out what that is, and that's not, that came off sounding negative. I didn't mean that to be negative. It's just, there's not as clear, it's not, I don't know. The mission is different. There we go. That's the way I would put it. The mission is different. The service is different. Forgetting to exercise. You will find many, many veterans will either continue to exercise and they will just impress you with their physique, or they get fat. There's really no in between. We have both gone through that transition of getting fat and then trying to figure out how to get fit again. So, you become a couch potato easily. There's no one there yelling at you. There's no test you gotta pass. That's some of it, yeah. Other questions? Okay.
Great. Excellent. So thank you, Margaret. There are resources, pamphlets, flyers for anyone that you know that's a vet, whether they're male, female, anything like that. Resources for you to take. This is recorded. You can find this webinar, well, YouTube recording will be under the internet, HR, professional development, and then voices of experience. You'll be able to see this one, the previous events as well. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Margaret, for telling us your story.
Thank
It's an honor.
Come on up, look at the show and tell, feel free. They don't teach you that.